Many said it couldn't be done, some said it shouldn't be done, but we have just brewed a delicious New England IPA in 36 hours. Genuinely. So a few weeks ago, I got a WhatsApp message from a dear old friend. And this message read, "Hey Johnny, hope you're good. Quick favour. What are the chances you could brew an IPA for my birthday party?" Now usually that is exactly the kind of message I love to receive, but it raised a couple of questions. The first one is, I didn't know anything about any birthday party, so where was my invite? And an addendum to that was, when is this birthday party? So I replied, and it turned out the birthday party was that weekend. So it was like 4-5 days away, which I guess shows the naivety of the craft beer drinking public, that they think that beer is like a cup of tea and you can just brew it in a couple of days. But his text did raise a couple of questions and a couple of ideas that I've been playing around with over the last couple of months, because I only really got hardcore into homebrewing over lockdown when I had the extra time, I had the grandfather, and I just needed to find something to do with my life. And the main reason that I hadn't got into homebrewing beforehand was the time that you need to invest. Not just, you know, the actual brew day, hours of cleaning, research, all that kind of stuff, but also the actual time it just takes to brew a beer. You know, the ones that I had done, and I was re-fermenting in bottle back then to get carbonation, it would be a full day, it would be up to 2 weeks of fermentation, and then another 2 weeks of bottle conditioning. So you had to plan a long way ahead for a birthday party, Chris. But that message from an increasingly unanonymous friend did get me thinking about how quickly I could produce a beer if I really wanted to. Knowing what I know from all of the homebrewing that I've done, and using, of course, as we always do on the Craft Beer Channel homebrew videos, an expert that really knows what they're talking about. Now, previous conventional wisdom would have said probably about 10 days to get to, you know, guaranteed final gravity and a tasty beer. But Kvike yeast came into my brain, and I know that you can ferment, you know, fully ferment out beers in just a matter of days. So what if I really pushed that to its logical conclusion, as quick as I could possibly ferment, and then included in that making a brew day incredibly simple, incredibly quick, and still making a really, really tasty beer? How quick could I do that? So I mentioned this idea to Brad.
Mate, absolutely love the concept. A few names I'm going to hit you with there, Johnny. Goes in 60 seconds, Fast and the Brewerious, 30 seconds to SARS, Speed 3, Booze Control.
Once I talked down his excitement and cultural references, we decided that we think it's possible to make a beer in less than 48 hours. And more specifically, I'm going to try to brew one in 36. I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to brew a beer, and then the next day I'm going to keg it and I'm going to drink it the next evening. So how do we go about conceiving and coming up with a recipe for a beer that's going to take less time to go from grain to glass than some barley wines boil for? The first thing, the most obvious thing, is Kvike yeast, right? We know that is super fast, we know we can really push the temperatures and get a really quick fermentation, and we also know that it delivers lots and lots of lovely, punchy, modern citric flavour. So it's a Kvike beer. We also know the ABV is going to have to be pretty low, because that will shorten the fermentation time as well. So we're probably making a table beer. If we've got these big citric characters coming from the yeast, we're making a session beer, we want lots of body. And a great way of doing that is to brew a New England beer. So we've got a New England table beer with Kvike yeast. That is pretty easy to work out. But then we get into the real technical processes of making that happen within 48 hours. Now, there are lots of shortcuts that you can take in home brewing, and I guess commercial brewing, and generally the advice you'll get from people is yeah, don't do that. But actually, you know, why do we boil for an hour? Why do we mash for an hour? Why do we pitch yeasts at certain temperatures? Why do we dry hop at certain times? And, you know, there is scientific data out there for some of those things, but generally they're not studied, generally they're not followed. Which is why whenever we start one of these episodes, I often go to the website called Brewlosophy, which is a fantastic resource for all homebrewers where they test stuff like this. So when it came to teaming up with an expert, in which I'm going to try and break basically all of the rules of traditional homebrewing, there was only one person I wanted to speak to, and that was Marshall from Brewlosophy. Unfortunately, he's on the west coast of America, which meant this call had to happen at night. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this mad experiment. So my first question is probably, what's the shortest mash time that we can get away with, like with your experience and the studies that you've done?
We've done anywhere as low as, I believe, 15-minute mash rests, which our experience with that corroborates what Scott Janish was putting out a few years ago as well, which is that 15 minutes is going to get you conversion. The longer you hold it, up till about 30 minutes, you're going to keep getting a little bit more conversion.
If I did a 15-minute mash, do I need to sparge, or am I better off just doing like a really thin mash?
A part of sparging is because people have this strong belief that your mash needs to be a very specific thickness. What we found is that thin mashes, thicker mashes, at least on the homebrew scale, it really doesn't seem to matter too much. So you really can skip the sparge altogether.
And what about the temperature of that mash? So in the recipe I've got at the moment, I've put it at 70.
Lower mash temperatures, so 148, what's that, like 67, 68 for Celsius? Something like that. You're going to get a more fermentable wort, which means you're going to get more alcohol in the finished product. Warmer temps, you're going to get a less fermentable wort and less alcohol. Your starting gravity is the same. It's the finishing gravity that's modulated. But what's weird is it doesn't seem to have a sensorial impact. You can't taste that sweetness. And we've done mash temp, so many mash temp experiments. We've served those beers to BJCP grandmaster judges, to well-known names in brewing. And nobody, I mean, with a fair amount of consistency, nobody seems to be able to perceive a difference depending on what your finishing gravity is, which is what mash temp seems to modulate.
Right.
I know.
The boil, right? There's always these concerns about, DMS boil off, about IBU extraction, all that kind of stuff. How quick can we boil without starting to run the risks?
Well, and I think the maltsters need a lot of credit nowadays. The way malt is made, I think, significantly reduces the chances of DMS ending up in beer, regardless of whether you boil or not. If you're buying under modified malt, you're probably going to want to mind your boil a little bit more, your boil length and vigor as well. But what we found is 15-minute boils, no DMS. I know. Now, the problem with reducing your boil length is that you still need bitterness in your beer. And we know that on some level, isomerization of alpha acids, which is when the acids that are in hops, they are isomerized, they are converted into what we perceive as perceptibly bitter. That is a function of time on some level. And so if you are going for a big old double IPA, you really need a decent amount of bitterness to balance out that sweetness. You probably, merely for not having to use a whole pound of hops, or whatever it is in your boiling wort, you might want to boil a little bit longer because you will isomerize more alpha acids and get that bitterness.
$1 million question here, Marshall. Do you think that I could brew in the morning and be drinking that beer by the following evening?
I mean, if not the night after you brew, the afternoon after, probably. I mean,
the morning after, I'll have it with breakfast if it all.
There you go. I mean, there's no
well.
alcohol in it, so you should be good to go, right?
Yeah, and it's full of oats and wheat, so. So as always, after an interaction with Brewlosophy, I've walked away a step closer to having a great beer recipe, but with a looser grip on reality. But I have now put together a recipe ambitiously called the quickest beer in the world. So this is going to be a 15-minute mash, no sparge, 20-minute boil, New England Kvike IPA. We're going all out with Citra Mosaic. We're going to make sure we get as much flavour in there as possible. I'm going to be using Incognito to reduce losses and mean that I only have to do a 15-minute hop stand as well. We're going to aim for 3.5%, and we're going to ferment. We're going to ferment at 40 degrees. We're going all out. I know we're going to get some big, like, boiled orange sweet kind of vibes, but hopefully that's going to work out all right. I think that's going to suit the beer. It's going to suit the hops that we're putting in there. So yeah, that's about it. Now all I have to do is get the ingredients from the malt miller and brew. Good morning, campers. Today is the day we brew the fastest beer in the world. This morning broke Frosty, which has already delayed the brew day. Basically, my hose completely froze, all the water in it, so I had to fill it manually, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to chill my beer, but that's a problem for in about 45 minutes to an hour's time. You can see the time right here. It is 10:23 on Wednesday the 18th of January. Now we can all remember where we were when the world's quickest beer was brewed. It's going to be a really loose mash because I'm not doing a sparge, so it's looking a little bit weird. Okay, so while my mash is going, I'm going to weigh out my Magnum hops, my bittering edition, and also the Irish moss, which is going to go in with the bittering edition, which is new to me. I really want this to clarify, not so much for the clarity, it's a New England beer, but I want all of the trub to drop out really easily, so I'm doing everything that I can to ensure that that happens, so that the really short cold crash this beer is going to get, is still effective. So there we go. That is my first addition. So this is my Mosaic. Oh my god, it smells dank. Oniony mango. Let's do this. Ooh, lovely and floral, that. Okay, so we're just coming up to the end of the mash, so before it starts ramping up the temperature, I want to check where we've ended up. Unusually, you're hoping to overshoot the gravity so that when you sparge, it's liquored back a bit. This time, we're really hoping that we've nailed the original gravity. Okay, we are at 10:35 after 15 minutes, so I am just going to give it another 5 minutes of conversion. Okay, that's 5 minutes, let's give it another go. Boom, yeah, 10:38, absolutely smashed it. Let's get this on. Alrighty, so now we're heating up for the boil. Pretty much exactly half an hour since I started mashing in. So yeah, just a 5 minute delay as I got the conversion that I wanted. If this takes 36 hours and 5 minutes, I'm going to be livid. There's only 19 minutes of this boil left. 19 minutes to wrestle with the Incognito. Oh yeah, that's nice and runny. Don't think I got it runny enough last time. So this is what it looks like inside. Ooh, there we go, that was easier than last time. Okay, so we're down at 80 degrees, which means it is hop time. And this gunky stuff in. Load it. Give that a stir, let's get this going. And now what I need to do is transfer the pump over to here, get that in there, and yeah, then pitch the yeast. So this is Mangrove Jack's Voss strain. It's the classic, the most common kind of Kvike strain. Wanted to use something super available to everybody and also something that's going to give us lots of character. I could have used Lutra, maybe that's too clean. So we're going to ferment this at 40. It says anything from 2240. We're going to go right at the top at 40, get as much character out of it as we can and as much speed out of it as we can. I've put some new yeast nutrient in there as well. These hops are going to be going in basically once I know that that's fully hydrated and absorbed in. I don't want these to interfere with the hydration of that. Fermentation is key. Flavour will come second for now. And also, at the temperatures that these are going to be steeping, I don't want them in there too long. So I'm going to aim for about 24 hours. So basically about 2 p.m. today, which is when I'm hoping the fermentation will finish. Tomorrow, I'll pop it in there. Right, it's me. Hi. In my pajamas. Yeah, I sleep in a Little Earth Project t-shirt. What? So I woke up and, as you do, first thing I did, check my fermentation temperatures. Pretty major drop in fermentation temperature, which according to my fermentation graph has been going on all night. This is slightly disappointing, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my heater on. I'm going to go get dressed, have a cup of coffee, and then take a gravity reading. Right, so I've got dressed just for you, and it's time for what is pretty much the 24-hour check. It is 9:56 AM, so 23.5 hours into this project. So I need this to be at least halfway fermented. Ideally more, down in the 10 teens would be the dream. So I've taken a sample, it smelled absolutely delicious, hoppy as hell, that's great. Okay, so we are at 10:19, so we are into the teens. I was kind of hoping it would be a little bit lower than that, but I guess I'll take that, you know. I'm hoping to crash this beer in 5 or 6 hours, keg it about 2 hours after that, and then I'm gonna shake until 8 or 9 PM, and hopefully I can have a beer. That's looking like it's gonna be a little bit tight. It's at 10:19, but we'll see if Johnny is drinking tonight very soon. Right, some bad news, people. All along we were told by many experts that maybe this wasn't possible, or maybe it wasn't a good idea. We had a stuck fermentation, and sometimes you come up with ideas that in the end just don't work. And I've basically been naive. I've done what every homebrewer does at the start of their journey, which is focus on the brew day and not on the fermentation. Whoa. Yeah, okay. Well, f me.